Hi. At some point, every watercolor painter asks the same question. Why do some paintings work and others just don't seem to? Over the years, I've found it almost always comes down to 5 simple things, and I call them the 5 C's of successful painting. And it makes it easy to remember. First is concept, connection, composition, contrast, and color. So let's walk through them, and I think you'll start seeing your own work differently. Let's go. Some years ago, I had the pleasure of visiting the London National Gallery, and there I saw Caravaggio's The Supper at Emmaus, which he painted in 1601. I was just awestruck. In fact, I stood there so long. My wife posted this picture of me saying that I would still be there if the museum hadn't closed. I was just mesmerized by it. And the reason is because it incorporates all 5 of the C's that we'll be talking about. That there certainly is concept here, the way that it is conceived, the layout, the composition, the emotional connection is strong. The values, of course, Caravaggio was a painter of light and he was a master of values. And the color harmony, everything plays together into this, to me, just perfect painting. So with that in mind, let's go into the first one. Everything starts with the concept. What are we painting? And more importantly, why? Is it a photo you had on your phone? Is it something that just caught your attention? Is it a creative idea you had? I always tell my students, if you're not excited about the subject, it's very hard to create an exciting painting. This particular one is a good friend of mine who'd been through a lot over his life. And so my concept was to show the light and dark that he has experienced in his life. And so I set him up in a dark room with a couple of lights that had a little orange one side and blue on the other side. So it had a real strong, warm, cool look to it. And it really played well into his face and also telling the story. And the story is what it was all about. This one here of a flying egret, it's backlit and it just has a peaceful, calm look to it. Well, the picture I took was at a Home Depot hardware store. I was parking in the parking lot. They had a little retention pond, and this bird was flying back and forth, and the light was beautiful. So I stopped and snapped some pictures and developed this idea of just a simple blue background of the water, and then the tips of the feet hitting the surface of the water, creating that little line. And then, of course, the reflection with some movement in it on the bottom. Of course, I didn't see that in the actual photo that I took. That took some imagination to come up with. But this is what I'm talking about when I say coming up with a concept. This one right here is of one of my granddaughters, and she was wearing this striped shirt. And I was going to do just a standard portrait of her. I love the way, as a tween, her hair was down over one eye, half of her face, and just had this, well, teenage look to it. And the more I looked at it, I thought, I wonder. And so I began to play around with extending those lines out to create something totally different. And it actually worked. I was able to make those lines shape the form of her body. And I moved her off to one side so she's not centered. So you've got some of that white space off to the side there. And it just made a very pleasing composition. This is from one of my early paintings that I did. And again, it was concept. Had this statue of this fairy, I assume reading fairy tales, in our yard. It's a short little thing, maybe 2.5 feet tall. That was it. And I had thought that I wanted to have her reading this with a nightlight, meaning a full moon. So when it was dark, I set up outside. I put the statue in front of some bushes. I got down on the ground. I put a ladder to one side of her, and I attached a utility light, and that's how she was lit. The rest was all just darkness. And laying on the ground, I was able to have that perspective then of looking up and into the sky. So this one was pure imagination except for the statue. And this is another grandchild. And it's similar to the stripes. It was part of that series. I called it my pattern series. And she was wearing this dress that had constellations on it. And I thought, hey, why don't we just extend those out and have that be the entire background, like she's standing in space. And so she's got this great look on her face. And so that's how I came up with this. So the whole idea is to come up with something that excites you, gives you a reason to spend the time to do this, and also has that little spark of something. The next C is connection, and this is where it becomes personal. By connection, I mean something with an emotional pull. Now, it can move you as the painter, and that gets expressed into what you're painting. Or it could be something that moves the viewer. This one right here was from a trip to the Dominican Republic, and it was a Haitian refugee camp. And this one is called Mama's Chair. And the reason I called it that is because, is she waiting for her mama to come back? Another reason is my mom was with me on that trip, and she actually was kneeling, talking to that little girl. That's who the little girl was looking at, was my mom. So it has a real double meaning to me, which of course makes it quite emotional. This one right here is from that same trip, a little girl having porridge, and I called it Blue Plate Special. This was an example of the background, actually, that dark area had a lot of stuff over there. I eliminated it, I simplified, and I made sure the light was the main thing in here. You can see that on her shoe, the reflection on the ground, and on her shoe, on her face. And this one has an emotional tug for everyone that sees it. This right here is another grandchild. One of the things we love to do as painters, I think, is if we can, and we like doing portraits, it's doing portraits of those we love, whether it's kids, grandkids, family, friends. It's just one of the special things that we can use our gifts for. One of the things I always ask is, what is the focal point in something? What do I want the viewer to look at? And here, of course, it's that beautiful, sweet, sleeping face there that draws you right into it. And that's always so important. This is another grandchild here too. And this one, I set her up in a bedroom with her favorite teddy bear. And I did the lighting in such a way, it's called Dreamer. And it's like she just woke up. The sun is now coming up and it's playing against her face. One of the things that's important in paintings is not just the concept, and we'll get into this more, but the composition. You can see the angle. You go to her face first. That's the first thing you see, is the face and the teddy bear. And then that beautiful curve of the body just gives you a flow that your eye can follow. It has balance, and the light space, the negative space, it all balances nicely. This painting is called The Honeymooners, and it actually is a scene from my back fence. The clay pot and the rusty hanger was on the fence, not the birds. The birds I added later. I found some zebra finch pictures and I composed it into this. The composition is such that your eye really flows nicely in here, but it's another example of connection. Connection, it doesn't have to be young children, something that's really tweaking your heartstrings. It can be something as simple as a flower. It could be a bird. It could be a landscape, a sunset that just evokes emotion. So as I said, it can be almost anything that moves you or moves your viewer, and hopefully it moves both of you. Composition is so important. It's how you arrange the elements on the page to make it pleasing, to draw the eye around. Figure out, where is my focal point? That's the first thing I always tell my students on a painting. Decide where the focal point is, and everything works out from that. This particular one is from a photo I took in Israel. We were in a Nabatean community. It was below ground. And I walked in, it was kind of like a cave area, and I turned around and saw this light pouring through down the steps and the light reflecting on the wall there. And so my composition was to not stand there right in front of it and take a picture up the steps, but to move off to the side so that I could have the light hitting that wall and then working its way down and then getting darker as it got away from that light. We'll talk about this when I get to the contrast section, but the only way to show light is to have it surrounded by dark. This one here was interesting. I was up in the mountains near Albany and passed a farm, and this chair was sitting in the snow. It was the end of March, and it was just intriguing. I pulled over, got out, took a picture. Farmer came out and said, "Can I help you, son?" I said, "I'm just taking a picture of your chair." He goes, "Yeah, okay." So I snapped this picture. Well, you can see to the left there's a combine there. There's a trailer, it looks like, in the back. There was other stuff around. So one of the things we do on composition is we simplify, eliminate anything that doesn't need to be there. I always tell my students that we're poets, we're not journalists. You're not trying to record everything exactly as it is. You can use your artistic license, make it work as you want to, as you need to, as your creativity says, go in this direction. And so it made it a simple painting. This one actually changed my life. It got me into American Artist magazine, a long article there some years back, and it just got the ball rolling. But it was such an exciting thing to do. And part of it, I think, is the simplicity of the scene. Here's another one from the Dominican. It actually is that same one of Mama's chair. And in this one, I just painted the girl standing there. It's called Pretty in Pink. And her face, what she's wearing, everything was just calling to me to paint it like this. You can see the background. I simplified it. The focal point is her face. Your eyes go right to the face and then work down to the doll and over to the chair. So again, this is me being poetic instead of being a journalist and being factual. And my last example is yet another grandchild that she was sitting on a blow-up bed and writing one of her stories. This is called Story Time. And the lighting was just perfect. So I just snapped a picture with my phone and went back in and I darkened areas, lightened areas, and asked that same question, where is the focal point? And of course, it's right there on the page. It was fun doing it where the wrist meets the paper. That's what we call a lost edge. I love doing lost and found edges. But that just grabs you and leads your eye around with a really nice, I believe, composition. And now what I believe is the most important, at least it is to me, and that's contrast or values. Values, of course, are the lights and the darks and everything in between. A lot of painters are afraid, especially in watercolor, to paint dark. I think a lot of the fear sometimes is not knowing how to do it correctly. And a lot of people have looked at my work and said, I didn't know watercolor could look like that. This is a great example right here that the crab fisherman on the left, that's how I photographed him. It was a pier on the Gulf, and I was way down with a long lens. He pulled up his crab trap, which was empty. I used some license and added some crabs in there for him. And it was midday. So this is pretty much factual, like a journalist would do. And after I finished it, I thought, I want it to have more impact. I want it to have more drama. So I painted it again. And the one on the right is the final one. You can see the differences in it. Immediately, you can see the play of light on his back, down his shoulder, on his arm. Composition-wise, everything leads in that little triangle all the way from his head down to the crab trap, over to the board from the pier leading back to him. But it's that background that just made everything pop on that. And to me, that is always so important. I love the saying, values do all the work, color gets the glory. If your painting feels flat, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a value problem. Here's another one here. This is a little girl from Ecuador, And the photo is on the left, as you can see, and it would have made a fine painting, but I wanted it to have more values, more contrast, more drama. So you can see what I did on it. I let some really strong light shine on that one side, going into darkness on the other. Same thing here. This is also from Ecuador. I call this one Blossom because of the pink that she's wearing. And again, I went ahead and I played around with the light and the dark to make it much, much stronger. And it really supports the focal point then, takes you right to her face, as opposed to, if you look at the photo, the brightest thing in there is her hat at the top. So this balances, I think, everything out. Everything I'm showing you here too, hopefully, is incorporating all 5 of these things. So composition, she's off to the side here. She's not centered, so it gives you that nice dark space, or as we would call it, white space. It's a resting place. That's the best way to look at it. So you've got interest going on, and then you have some resting place. And of course, it's making an emotional connection there too. This next one here is of a fly fisherman that I photographed up in the mountains, and he was in a stream by this waterfall. And just the way the light hit and everything was just stunning. But the important thing in this was getting those strong values in there. So you can see that the impact is just really strong. And then the last one for contrast, again, this is from the Dominican. And this one here, again, it hits all the areas. Contrast is so important because you can see how bright that hair is, lost edge going into the little baby's hair, and composition, bringing it all down. Your eye flows nicely. The background of the photo was actually very busy. I simplified. That's really important sometimes, is to simplify. Figure out your focal point. Do everything you can to work around it so everything points to that focal point. And our last C is color. And this is where a lot of artists overcomplicate things. I'm not thinking about using more color. I'm thinking about using better, more unified color. A strong painting usually has a limited palette. This is a limited palette here. You can see there's a lot of color going on here, but it all works together. Nothing is jumping out saying, hey, look at me. It all has a unified look to it. This gentleman here is from Haiti, and what really got me was those eyes. What has he seen? And this, again, hits, I think, all 5 of the C's. The composition, the emotional connection, concept, contrast, definitely. And now the color on it just helps to unify the whole thing. This here is one of my most popular demos. And it has unified color too, that I only used, I believe, 4 colors in this entire painting. And that's something important. A lot of people think they need to use 15 and 20 colors. And I have a lot of colors I've never opened. I've bought tubes that for years have been sitting in a drawer because I use a handful over and over again. I know them. They know me. I know what they're going to do. And I know how they work together. And this is a good example of that. That these colors are unified, they work together. Even the blue in the eyes is used throughout the fur, and it just brings everything together. This is another good example. You've got some bright colors in here, but it all works together, and there's only, I believe on this one too, only 4 colors used. And it's amazing how it just makes a painting look unified. Even though there's bright pink on here, it all just works with that blue because that blue is actually in that pink to create shadows. And so by using just a limited number of colors that play well together, you can really accomplish a lot of things. And this is the final example here. This is from the Dominican. You recognize from before. I will revisit reference photos from time to time when I look at it and go, you know what, I can do something different with it. I can pull something out from here that I didn't see before, that I have a fresh vision for it. And so This one here, I really wanted to do a close-up and let light be the star, and that face of hers on there holding her baby brother or sister. And so I changed the background. Again, this is a unifying color. There's maybe 4 colors in here, and they all work together, and that is so important. The colors really support the mood and your concept. It should always serve the painting and not compete with it. Well, I hope that that was a help. So when a painting isn't working, I don't guess anymore, and you don't have to either. Think about those 5 things: concept, connection, composition, contrast, and color. And almost every time the answer's in there somewhere. If you start thinking this way before and during your painting process, you'll see a big shift in your results. And that's exactly what we're after. All right then, let's go paint.